Hello and welcome to Reading by the River, Summer Reads, recommended to you by the Valley Librarians. My name is Marie Schmukal. I'm the director of the Warren Public Library, and I'm here with...
I'm Cory Stephenson. I'm the library director at the Moortown Community Library.
And I'm Shevonne Travers at the Joslyn Memorial Library, and I serve as the program coordinator.
So in addition to some recommendations for your summer reading, we also just want to take a minute or two to talk about what programming we have scheduled for the summer. One thing that is returning this year is Adult and Teen Summer Library Bingo. This ended up being a very popular program last year, and we have brought it back. And we've also listened to your comments, one of which was, adults want creamies as much as the kids do. So 5 in a row on your bingo sheet, turn it in at your library, and you will get a certificate for a creamy at the VG. Thank you, VG. And there is also opportunity to get raffle tickets as well, entered into a raffle for gift cards at local establishments. So teens and adults, pick up your bingo card at one of our libraries and start reading.
And along with that, as we've done for many years, the 3 Valley Libraries coordinate on our summer reading program or summer learning program for kids. And we have a whole host of workshops, activities, a few do on your own things to celebrate the theme this year, which is Color Our World. And we'll be kicking things off this Saturday, actually, at the Farmers Market. We'll have an opportunity for kids and anyone really to help us paint a banner for the 4th of July parade happening in Warren. Or you can color your own bookmark if you don't feel like getting into the paint situation. We are also doing ponding. We have some crafternoons. We have clothing upcycling. All of this information on these programs and whether or not you need to sign up are on our websites. We're going to finish things off in the beginning of August with a big art party. We'll have a lot of outdoor art stations, and we'll be able to see a community art project that everyone will have an opportunity to be a part of. And then sort of on your own opportunities, all 3 libraries have story walks that you can go and walk from page to page in the different locations.
And that's a square on the bingo sheet.
Oh, we'll see. There you go. That would be easy to complete as a family. There also will be a kids bingo challenge, which will be a different sheet than what Marie was showing you. And then we are going to bring back the popular adventure hunt that we set up last year. So there's 2 boxes in each town, and clues lead you from box to box. And when you complete the box, you complete the challenge and bring it in, you will get a prize. So a lot of fun stuff happening this summer to keep you reading and doing literacy, and we hope that we see you at some of those workshops. And I think now we're ready to dive into the books. So
All right.
Shevonne's going to start us
I'll
off.
start us off. So I want to talk about Heartwood first. And the author is Amity Gage. And this is not her first book. But I heard about this book, and I just had to have it as quickly as possible because it's all about a woman getting lost on the Appalachian Trail, which has always been on my bucket list, but not sure I'm really going to take that on. And though this is fiction, she did base this story on the woman that many people remember was lost on the Appalachian Trail in the 100-Mile Woods and was never found alive. And it took several years, actually, to find her remains. The book is very suspenseful because she's an experienced Appalachian Trail hiker. She's 200 miles from the end of the trail. Her husband is supposed to meet her, and she doesn't show up. And she doesn't show up the next day. And she doesn't show up the next day. So everyone starts to search for her. She's in her mid-40s. People are trying to figure out how she got off the trail, what happened to her. There's a warden who takes on this search, who's quite experienced as well. And then there's a woman in a retirement home who's online talking to someone who's somewhat of a survivalist. She's also an avid bird watcher. And how she gets involved with this, it's quite the puzzle, and it will keep you reading this book and not wanting to put it down. And there's also lots of letters that the woman who is lost, if she is indeed lost, writes in her diary to her mother that are beautifully written. So that's one of my recommendations.
Sounds like a good read.
Yes, good summer, appealing to hikers and, outdoors people.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
All right.
You want to go next?
I thought we were going to go
okay.
this way, but
I'll go
however.
next. The Road to Tender Hearts by Annie Hartnett. This is a heartwarming story, and it takes place on a road trip. And what is more summer than road trip, right? And I just want to read the little quotes that she has at the very beginning of the book, which is, "Why aren't we flying? Because getting there is half the fun." And that is Clark Griswold in National Lampoon's Vacation.
Of course.
As a Gen Xer, that speaks to my heart. And the other quote she has is, "Shut up and look out the window." And that's a quote by Paul Hartnett Jr. on every family road trip. I'm assuming that's her father.
That also sounds familiar.
It does,
actually.
So this follows the story of a guy in his 60s. His name is PJ, and he has won a lottery, $1.5 million, recently in the last several years. And so he doesn't work. He's an alcoholic. He is divorced. His wife lives down the street from him with her new boyfriend, soon to be fiance. But he goes there every morning for breakfast. He's kind of a loser. He's a hoarder. So it turns out that he has an estranged brother that lives a couple blocks away, but they never talk. And so there are very heavy things that happen in this book, and one of them is this tragic event where his two a niece and a great nephew end up orphaned. And he gets noticed that he's the next of kin, and he didn't even know, and they had no idea he existed. And so these are his brother's grandchildren. So he ends up taking custody of them, and they go on this road trip together because he had recently read an obituary that his high school, like the woman he thought was going to be the woman he was with for the rest of his life, they didn't end up together, but she's recently widowed. And he's like, we're going to drive out to her retirement community. And I'm going to rekindle this with her. So they go on this cross-country journey from Massachusetts to Arizona in search of love for him. As well as one of the kids is convinced that her real father is a soap actor, and they decide to go to a soap opera convention to accost them. I mean, there's a lot of funny stuff. There is some heavy stuff, as I said, but there's a lot of fun in this as well. So great road trip book, and also heartwarming.
Great. I also have chosen a funny book as one of our picks, and it is Carl Hiaasen's Fever Beach. It's his newest one. I first became aware of this author actually from his kids' mystery books, which are hilarious. Highly recommend them, like Hoot, Chomp, Scat. There's a few others. Flush. And much like his kids' books, the titles for adults center on parody, the absurd, and of course all things Florida. So if you like Florida, or you're going to Florida, or you just feel like we live in Florida right now because it's 90 degrees out, you'll like this book. It tells a wild story. It starts off with the character Dale Figo, a former Proud Boy who was kicked out for being too incompetent. He picks up a hitchhiker, and then in Carl's classic caper fashion, things soon get out of hand. He introduces some other quirky adversaries. including several characters from his other novels. And, as he kind of does best, he manages to deliver a biting commentary on the state of our world today, but making it fun enough that it's actually entertaining. And title Fever Beach sounds like a summer read to me.
Absolutely.
Looks like a summer read.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a summer read.
Glasses.
So, if you like
Okay.
funny absurdity, that would be a good pick for you.
Okay,
Moving on to
Here's-
nonfiction.
here's my nonfiction summer reading. This is Connecting Dots. It's a true story of a boy who lived in Park Slope in New York. When he was 4 years old and the doorbell rang, he raced to the door, opened it, and a young man who was a neighbor on the same street dumped sulfuric acid all over him, his entire body. This 4-year-old Josh Mealy is the author of this book. This is his memoir, and he goes through his entire life. Now, I found it amazing that this boy survived. He had multiple surgeries. He had to get flown to a burn unit in Texas. It's not like the family had money for this. And one of New York's politicians at the time found the way to do this and got a helicopter to come right down and pick him up. He went through several surgeries. He was in tremendous pain. But he was 4 years old. And so he figured out how to cope with his newfound blindness, which he's been doing throughout his life. And he's thrived in between a bit of drug addiction, being part of a rock and roll band, being out in Berkeley, California, which I believe is where he now lives. He finds love. He has children. And he works for NASA. And all the while, he doesn't want to be known as someone with a visual handicap. And he pushes back on that. But eventually, he wakes up and says, there are all these things that don't work for me and don't work for other people that are visually impaired. And so he starts advocating in all sorts of ways, including climbing signposts and saying, well, there's no Braille down here and I can't see anything up there. And so he does so much advocacy, and I'd say this book is well worth a read as to what happens throughout his life. And I would have never known about this book, but a person in our writing group was one of those neighbors on Park Slope. And those neighbors on Park Slope were terrified after this incident happened.
How old is he now?
I would say probably late 50s,
Oh, okay.
maybe 60.
Yeah. Sounds compelling.
Yeah. I'm not going to tell you
Okay.
everything in the book.
Okay.
In the vein of nonfiction, my next recommendation is Who is Government? The Untold Story of Public Service by Michael Lewis. It's actually edited by him. Michael Lewis put out a call to various writers to write essays about civil servants. And these, I believe, were originally published in the Washington Post, and then Michael Lewis put them all together in a book and wrote a foreword. And they're just, one thing that I like about it is they're individual essays, so you don't have to commit to a whole book at a time, or you should kind of dip into it at one essay at a time, or you could just read the one that's most interesting to you. But to give you an idea of some of the civil servants that are in here, we've got Ronald Walters, who's from the National Cemetery Administration, and it's just about how he just takes care of the cemeteries and the families that have, whether it's a soldier or a former military, retired military person that gets buried in these cemeteries. Just the care and thought that goes into every single family and every single cemetery, national cemetery. They're all over the country. And then we also have the essay, The Canary, which is Christopher Mark of the Department of Labor, and he works in mines. And it was really interesting because he works in mines and in mine safety, and his father was an engineer. I believe he was an engineer. He used to study the cathedrals in Europe and how the construction, it's amazing when you see the cathedrals and when they were built and how they still are standing today. So his son took kind of a non-traditional path, didn't go to college right away, whatever, but he ended up working in a very similar field in terms of structural engineering and safety. But anyway, they're compelling reads in terms of the individual stories, and they're great writers. Dave Eggers, Geraldine Brooks, W. Kamau Bell, or Sarah Vowell, they're all contributors to this. And as I said, it's can be kind of low commitment if you just wanted to try it out and just read one essay. And because not everybody, wants to commit to a whole book. But so who is government?
All those jobs that are very important that
All
nobody knows about.
Exactly.
Yes.
And the one thing that Michael Lewis keeps pointing out, and each of the individual essayists, is that most of these people, when approached, they're like, why do you want to tell my story? I'm just doing my job. They're very humble and very, they want no recognition for what they do. So to know that there are these people out there who are just doing their job and keeping us safe in various ways, and hopefully are still doing that.
Hopefully.
It was a good read.
I'm going to buck the trend and stick with my fiction choices. So I had to print this out because it's actually thank you. Because it's actually checked out. This is an Oprah's Book Club read. It's by Eric Puchner, and it's called Dream State. And it's set in Montana. It tells this sweeping tale of two families through marriage, children, hopes, dreams, aging, and more. It starts off in 2004 with a wedding at a campy lake house in Montana and ends some 70 years later, so it goes a little bit into the future from us. It's compelling, I think, because it shows sort of how the choices you make create the path that you follow in life, and what might be lost with making some of those choices as well. And I also really appreciated the way he dealt with climate change, weaving it into the story. It's sort of underlying in the beginning until the impacts start to become part of daily life, kind of like we're experiencing it today and then into the future a little bit. Overall, this is really a character-driven novel. I wouldn't say there's a huge plot arc to follow. So if you like character novels, this would be for you. I think his writing makes all the characters very poignant and believable, and you get invested in all of them. So I think it's a great pick for Oprah's Book Club this year.
Cory, why is it called Dream State?
That is a good question that I don't really have the answer to. I mean, I read it and I wouldn't say anything explicit was discussed about it. So maybe there's a clip of the novelist out there explaining it.
Okay. That might be a good book group
question.
Question, yeah.
And set in Montana, so any of you who have spent time in that state will really appreciate the descriptions of that.
Thank you. So, my way of bucking the last trend, describing the last book I want to talk about, is that I have no visual. The book is out.
At all of our libraries.
Yes. And the book is My Friends, from the Swedish author Fredrik Backman. And, I got hooked on him years ago with a man called Uwe. And and
Swedish, whatever.
And
Swedish.
I've been reading all of his books as they come to our library or they're for sale, published. This book I found was a bit different from him because he it's very related to art. And
Which ties into our theme of Color Our World this year.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts in present day with a young girl who's just turned 18 named Louisa, who has been very attracted to this particular painting. And so she happens to know that it's up for auction. She doesn't have the money to buy this painting, but she figures a way to sneak into the bathroom and get there to just take a look at it. And then she gets obviously thrown out of the auction and comes upon who turns out to be the artist, who by then looks homeless and is very ill. The painting that's described in this book and the story is, she's so curious about this that she has to try to learn more. And so from first connecting with him, she subsequently connects with other people that were part of this painting and how it came to be. And the painting, he had no idea that he was going to become such a well-known artist, but his friends did. And so they pursued that entire summer. Please go after this competition. I don't have any paints. I don't have any way to do this. Well, they all ganged up and figured out different ways they might get the money to get the paint. And there were all sorts of roadblocks. And you never knew whether they were actually going to be able to get the paint or not. It's a story about 4 teenagers, all of what they dealt with in their own home lives and how they got through that summer, and then what happened for that young man who then became this very well-known artist. So I couldn't put it down. I had to read the whole thing.
Sounds like a classic Bachman novel.
It does. And one of the squares on bingo is read a book featuring an artist or a work of art. So there you go.
Okay.
You almost have 5 in a row at this point.
If you read our recommendations, yes. That's true. My last selection is my favorite genre, which is cozy mystery. This is Vera Wong's Guide to Snooping on a Dead Man, and it's by Jessie Q. Sutanto. This is the follow-up to the first Vera Wong book. And actually, I was really interested to read in the author's note that she wasn't planning on writing a second one. She did not intend to write a series, but the overwhelming response to the first one, she decided to write a second one. And I'm really glad she did, because Vera is back and she's the same as ever. She is an elderly, well, she calls herself an old woman sometimes, and sometimes she says she's young. She's about 60. And she plays the card whatever way she needs to in the situation of whether it's better to be old or young. And she runs a tea shop in San Francisco's Chinatown. And she finds herself kind of meddling into mysteries and murders. And she collects a whole group of people along the way. So it's a lot of found family as well as mystery, because she kind of finds the stray people of the world who might be needing someone or something. And they don't necessarily know that until they have Vera in their life, who, whether it's because she's feeding them or just looking after them. So there's that element to it. And Vera is just a hoot. So Vera Wong's Guide to Snooping on a Dead Man, or her first book, I would also recommend.
Do you feel like you need to read the first book to get the second book?
You don't. Some of the characters from the first book show up, but you don't necessarily need to know their whole backstory to read this one.
Great.
Yeah.
So my last, got to get my notes in front of me, book is a nonfiction book, and just the cover alone sucks you right in. It is called Is a River Alive by Robert McFarlane. He is the author of Underland, which was another very popular exploration of nature. And it reminds this book, it's the question right there of this ancient idea that rivers are in fact alive and should be treated as such in everyday life and, under the law. It's an exploration of that idea. He follows 3 larger river ecosystems in India, Canada, and Ecuador, but he also brings in his own experience with a small chalk stream near his house. And I had to look that up because I'd never heard of a chalk stream.
How do you spell that?
Chalk as in like blackboard chalk.
Wow.
They're mostly found in the UK, and it's just a very special type of water that flows from the springs on a bedrock layer of chalk. So he explores that as well. I think books like this can help us reclaim our sense of wonder about the natural world. And it does seem like a perfect book for you to have while you're sitting on the banks of the Mad River this summer, pondering whether the Mad River is alive or not.
Awesome.
So those are just a
Some.
small selection of the books we have in our library. You have a card at one of our libraries. You can borrow books from any of our libraries. And of course, there's the online resources we all offer as well for audiobooks and ebooks. So we hope that you'll come get a bingo card, you'll come check out our kids programs, and you'll read some of these books.
We hope to see you at the library a lot this summer.